Hello, and welcome to Season 11, Episode 5 of the Cartridge Club's Game of the Month podcast, where we bring together members of the Cartridge Club community to discuss our community playthrough. If you're new to the club or are interested in participating in future months, please join our community Discord or follow us on Twitter at Cartridge Club NA. We love to see the hashtag Cartridge Club used whenever you talk about one of the games we've selected. I'm Eric, the mighty QDawg, here with my spouse, Melissa, and on behalf of our rotating pool of hosts, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Additionally, on behalf of the entire Cartridge Club community, I'd like to give a special thanks to our Patreon Club backers, Joel Boyce, Kevin from Canadian Grooves, Bass Guy, Caleb J. Ross, and Dean from Round 2 Gaming. Thank you. So it's January, and that means Sega month here in the Cartridge Club. This time, we're playing a classic Sega arcade and Sega Genesis heavyweight, Golden Axe. Joining us to talk about the game is Bill from STC Pod.
Howdy. How's it going?
Bill, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We also have Duke from Retro Nonsense.
How's it going, everybody?
And Owazrim.
That's me.
And finally, my spouse, Melissa, Mrs. QDawgs.
Hey, everybody.
Let's start with Bill. Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history with Golden Axe, and what your experience was with the game this month.
Well, first of all, let me say what an amazing professional reading that was by our host, Mighty QDawg. Exceptional. I was riveted to that entire read. It was so smooth and strong.
Bill, you don't know how long he's practiced that. Can I just say?
And he's probably gonna cut that out.
It was amazing. He's ready to perform at his next big event. What's the next big event, Eric?
We'll see if they have me back.
So Golden Axe. I don't know. This for me in high school, we had an arcade like within steps of my high school, so most lunches were spent in that arcade. And once I found Golden Axe, that was the deal. That was so many lunch hours spent playing Golden Axe on the arcade. It was great. It was one of the few games you could just plunk in one quarter and play through your entire lunch hour the whole way through. It just seemed very for the player. It wanted the player to succeed and give all the satisfaction along the way. So I did have a Genesis growing up, so obviously when you learned there was Golden Axe for the Genesis, you had to get that, and the port was pretty good. Wasn't as good as the arcade, of course, but spent a lot of hours on that too.
Did you really play through on one quarter?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. If you're the lady, because you got lots of magic you can carry with you, and
we'll talk about the characters too. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the arcade was where you started, and you've played the Genesis version too. Is that right?
That's correct. And then getting ready for this, in honor of the QDawgs, I of course tried the Sega Master System version. It tried, and and then I was able to find Golden Axe 2 and Golden Axe 3, which I have no experience with, but I got to dabble with those two.
Good. We'll talk a little bit about those too. Okay. So you're a veteran. You're familiar with the game. Duke, how about you?
Well, my name's Duke from Retro Nonsense. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel sometimes. But my experience with this game was, as far as I know, just Sega Genesis. I played it casually when I was a young teenager. I never had a Genesis, but a couple of my friends did. And I played this game, as I said, casually with my friends' Sega Genesis during sleepovers and stuff like that. But I never played through it back in the day, so to speak. And never had it. And I never, to my best recollection, never played it in the arcade. I might have, but I don't have any memory of that. So the Sega Genesis version is really the only version I've ever played. Played it on the original 6-button controller. I actually played it on my Genesis 6-pack cartridge because I don't have the original, version, but it plays the same as far as I know.
Yeah.
So that's how I played it this time around.
Okay.
And much like Bill, I did also play Golden Axe 2. I was able to find that on the Switch Genesis collection.
Oh,
So,
nice.
Yeah, it was really cool that I got a chance to play that as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about Golden Axe too. Okay, Owazrim, how about you? Tell us about a little bit about yourself and your experience with this game.
I've been gaming since the Commodore 64. My history with Golden Axe is with the Genesis. I don't remember when I got it, and I'm pretty sure I got it when it was re-released in the cardboard format, because I don't have. I know I have my childhood copy, but I don't have a case with it. And I had it's in a clear plastic case, like rental case. So I'm pretty sure I threw that box away because those cardboard boxes were garbage. So I played the Genesis version. I messed around with the arcade version and the Master System version. But I know I beat the Genesis version as a kid.
Very good. Do you happen to know, Owazrim, if there's a difference? I'm thinking of Revenge of Shinobi, which has multiple different versions across time. Do you know if Golden Axe had anything like that either?
Not that I'm aware of. Outside of, like, there's some differences with the Master System version from the Genesis and the arcade.
But like the 6-pack that Duke played and maybe the original version and the re-release, they're probably all the same.
I think they're all the same version. And if there's any changes, it must be something really slight.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, Melissa, tell us about yourself and your experience with Golden Axe.
My experience with Golden Axe is basically watching you play it a little bit over the years, since you are a Sega boy, and you and your brothers would play. So I've seen the game. I probably played it randomly with you guys when we would get together to just hang out and play video games. So, and then this time for this show, I played it. I tried to play through. I was not very good. There was no way I would finish it in 1 quarter, like Mr. Bill over there.
No.
Wow.
So, but I tried to play through it, you and I, and then I played co-op with you this time around.
That's right. There's co-op.
We did the first one and the second one.
So we played it. You and I played it on the Sega Genesis Mini.
Yes.
Which, again, it's the same Genesis version as anybody have. I actually resorted to that to take advantage of the save states, but don't tell anyone.
Save stating is fine.
I did have to save state. So I want to talk to some of you guys who are a little better or quite a bit better at me than games. Okay, so we played on the Sega Genesis. I tried it on a number of different versions. The Sega Genesis cartridge, Sega Genesis Mini. I don't have access to the arcade, so I didn't get a chance to try that version out.
Oh, it's a shame you didn't get to play the arcade version.
I'll tell you at this point, I remember wanting a Sega Genesis in 1989. I got some magazine. It was called Game Pro. They were talking about the Sega Genesis, and they had shown ads of Golden Axe. And I remember seeing it from the arcade, and I was like absolutely in love with the ads for this. I wanted this game so badly for the Sega Genesis in 1989 or early 1990. I never ended up getting it at that time, but I was really in love with the graphics, or at least the way the graphics appeared. And when we finally got the game, which was many years later, I was disappointed because one of the cool things in the arcade is when you kill or defeat an enemy, Bill, what happens to the enemy on the screen?
Their clothes fall off?
They stay there.
No. Go ahead.
They stay on the screen.
They stay on the screen, all grayed out. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I've never seen a game do that before. They always disappear. And of course, we got the Genesis version years later, and we killed the first enemy, and he flashed and disappeared off the screen. And I was like, come on. That was one of the best parts about the game, was all the dead bodies on the – well, okay, I don't want to get too grim. But all right. Anyway, back to the arcade game. Bill, you have a lot of experience with it. Tell us a little bit about, is there a story of Golden Axe?
Well, you can dive pretty deep into the story of Golden Axe, and all the characters have big – backstories and everything. But if you just boil it down to the simplest thing, there's this giant that has taken over this kingdom. He's captured the king and the princess, and he sent his armies out to rape and pillage the villages. And there are 3 characters who were personally affected by tragedy by these armies. and they managed to survive. And as they're walking along, they found their friend Alex, I think is his name, dies, and that put them over the edge. They're like, "That's it." And they took out Alex, so now we're gonna go. And so you go across the land and challenge the Death Adder.
Yeah. Now I think in the arcade they actually show you talking to Alex, and he's attacked on screen.
Yeah, he
But in the
limps.
Genesis version, it's all just exposition, right?
Yeah, it's like
all
why even mention Alex
Yeah.
in the Genesis? Who's this Alex? Like, come on.
All right. So
why is his name Alex? I wouldn't know.
There's
Not
a
very
prequel there.
medieval.
There's
Probably
another
a programmer or somebody's friend.
I mean, you got Axe Battler, Gilius, and then you got Alex.
Alex.
I want to know Alex's story. He came
That's
with
true.
a story.
His story was very short. He came and he died,
Yeah.
but he was your friend apparently.
They
Yeah.
should do a whole Golden Axe spin-off about Alex.
That's what I
Prequel
mean.
Story.
Definitely.
So, Owazrim, you told me that the Master System version has a little bit more or a different story?
It's different. Like, I didn't play all the way through the Master System version. I was like, all right, let me watch a playthrough, and I'll watch it like 3 speed to get through it. But at the end, they start talking about this guy named Tarek. In the Master System version, Axe Battler is Tarek. And I was like, oh, I had no idea about that. But see, it's generally the same thing. Death Adder came, he stole the golden axe. Things are getting bad. And then Tarek comes, he's the hero that they need. Not necessarily the hero they want or whatever. He stopped by the temple of Uria. The priest of the temple granted Tarek the choice of taking one of 3 magic powers of the gods who protect Uria. So it actually has a story reason of why he can pick between the magic. It's not just, it's 3 magic because you had the 3 characters in the other games.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it also says that the priestess gave him the power to come back to life, but there was a limitation. And you can only do it 3 times. So, yeah, I just thought it was cool that there's actually a story reason for why he can choose the magic. And so it's a little twist, and it's Tarek and not Axe Battler.
Honestly, I brought up the story at the beginning of this because it has very little impact, as far as I can tell, on the actual game, right? I mean, they talk about it briefly at the beginning, and then really it's just a street, or what I call a street brawler.
Yep, just to beat him
Am
up.
I wrong? Does the story really doesn't reflect too much in the game, does it?
No.
It's all about, really, you're playing Golden Axe because it's all about the gameplay, right? Let's talk about the gameplay a little bit. We kind of mentioned some of the characters. Let's go through them explicitly. There are 3 characters that you can choose from. Duke, do you remember? You named them off earlier. What are the 3 characters?
I remember Gilius, who is the dwarf, and I think it's Axe Battler is the character kind of framed after Conan. And I don't remember the girl's name, the Amazon bikini wearing girl. I don't remember her name, but I played with the dwarf pretty much every time.
The dwarf. Bill, do you know the girl's name?
Tyrus Flair.
Tyrus Flair. That is right.
She's from Firebush Island.
Okay. All right. So Duke, you told us you played with the dwarf. Mostly, and he's the only one who's actually wielding an axe in the game. Mm-hmm. Bill, I asked you about the girl. Who did you play with?
I always like playing with the dwarf, but if I'm doing a solo run, I do like taking the girl because she can carry so much magic too. But I don't know, on the Genesis, I think she's really tough to play with. Her reach is really tiny.
What is she? What's her weapon? Is it a sword too?
It's supposed to be a long sword.
I did try all the characters when I first started playing it. I did try them all.
Yeah.
And I think I picked the Gilius, the dwarf, last. And I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's the best. So I stuck with him. But I did try them all. And I think my least favorite is Axe Battler. He's just kind of mundane and kind of bland.
Yeah.
Doesn't play very well. But the dwarf really has the best play controls, I believe.
What did you like about the dwarf? Was he stronger or what? Or just
well, his ram attack was very effective. And he just, I don't know, just something about his stature, his kind of compactness seemed to kind of play into being able to maneuver better and fight a little better. It could just be in my mind, but I just preferred using him over the others.
What about you, Owazrim? Who did you like to play with?
I play with all three of them, but generally it's either Axe Battler or Gilius. Because there's something about thinking about doing that ram attack or charge attack and just hitting somebody with that Viking style helmet.
Yeah, that's great.
His special attack, it gets you out of so many tight spots when they're cornering you, when they're on each side of you, and you're swiping one way, and then special attack, and he swings backwards and knocks the guy behind him and comes back. You need to have that special attack going for Gilius.
Oh, wait a minute. What's the special attack? Is it that thing where he rolls, or are you talking about the charge?
No, where he rolls backwards.
Funny you mentioned that because I hated that thing. I could not get that. I tried it all the time and it never did anything. It just annoyed me. So I never used that.
Wow.
No, maybe I didn't. Maybe I got to practice at it, but for me it was not effective at all. I thought it was just like a get out of the way maneuver. I didn't think it was an attack. But every time I did it, it didn't do anything.
I think that's their most powerful one too. If you use their special attacks, I think that takes the most hit points away from your enemy. And that will always clear out the guy behind you, and they can't really counter that in the original game.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not trying to jump ahead. I know we'll talk about it later, but his special attack in the second game was much better for me. Because I use it all the time in the second game, where he spins around his axe and knocks people back on both sides. That was great, but I could not get this rolling thing to do anything for me. So
that's interesting. The rolling thing, I could barely get it to pull off. But Bill, you're telling me, I mean, this is one of the things that I noted about this game is that especially when you're playing solo, they like to put 2 or more characters on the screen and they like to surround you.
Yeah.
They go on either side of you. And you're saying that the dwarf special attack can actually knock the guy behind you back?
Yeah, 100%. And it's a pretty long distance too. It's like 2.5 paces he'll roll back. So once you learn that spacing, as soon as they fall in behind you, you hit your 2 buttons, he clears that guy, and then he rolls back to where he was, and you finish the guy off in front of you.
I'm going to have to revisit that
I've never gotten that one to work either.
Also,
the only hassle is hitting those 2 buttons simultaneously.
Exactly.
That is
if you would have had the Super Nintendo controller with the extra button, then it would have been way better because pushing those 2 buttons at the same time, you'd end up jumping half the time. It was crazy.
Yeah, that'll kill you. If you're planning on the special and it doesn't jump, you're like, frustrated.
If they would have released this on the Super Nintendo, it would have been maybe one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe the Super Nintendo couldn't handle it. I don't know if it could have.
I'm pretty sure Golden Axe came out before the Super Nintendo, though.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I definitely want to talk about the controls, but before I forget, I want to make sure we get Melissa. Melissa, tell us about your favorite character. And any strategies you had, like Bill, about how you dealt with this.
My strategy was button mashing. So, no, but I would play Tyrus, mostly because when we played together, you played Gilius. So I was left with, Tyrus or Axe Battler. And I did try Axe Battler too, and I actually today I ran through it solo, and I got further with Tyrus than I did with Axe Boy. So her butt may have had something to do with it, the way she shows it around. I don't know.
Really? We did do a poll of the Cartridge Club community to see who the community prefers to play with, and there were a couple of write-in responses. Most of them, 2 of them, there were only 3. 2 of them were for Gilius the dwarf, and 1 was for Tyrus.
I didn't even see this poll.
I didn't either.
It was early. It was early in the month. Let's see, January 6th, maybe is when it was done. But the poll also had a color coding to it, and I am not sure if it meant to, if you want Tyrus Flare, which is red. Blue, I forget if blue is retweet or comment, and then green was Gilius Thunderhead. But a lot of people liked the the tweet. So if I'm to interpret it that way, we had a lot of votes for Tyrus, but I'm not sure that's actually the way the vote went. But I'm going to claim I'll make my analysis is that it seems many people enjoy using the dwarf. That seems to be the most preferred character. And certainly, as you mentioned, Melissa, it's my preferred character. I think we like the strength and the arc of the axe and things like that. And as Bill mentioned, the charge attack is almost unstoppable, which is what I typically use to knock enemies away to give you a little bit of space. I felt that these enemies were constantly trying to get on either side of you and close in. And one thing I also noticed was in some of the middle to late stages, there's one in particular where the fighting area is really closed in. And so one of the things that I was constantly trying to do was knock enemies away just so I can get some space to work. Do you guys have any comments about that? Am I the only one? Or
I think it's a flaw, actually, of the game. It's you find yourself almost, I don't want to call it cheating, but I guess maybe playing like maybe they didn't intend to get right away. Very early on, you find out that you really can't just button mash and use your regular attack. You either have to be jumping around like a rabbit or using your charge attack. And that's really it. I mean, the whole game, that's pretty much what I have to do. Every once in a while, you might find yourself in a position where you can just hit your attack button. But within a couple of seconds, somebody's coming from behind you, like you said. And you got to stop and turn around. Maybe if I knew how to use that roll thing like Bill's talking about, that could have helped a little bit. But I find myself just jumping all over the place like a nut and swinging my axe around. And again, also the charge attack, and almost to a flaw, because, I mean, let's face it, the whole game, it's just rinse and repeat. There's no upgrades. You're not learning any new moves. It's the same thing over and over and over until you just beat the game. So I find myself going back and forth with my charge attack and jumping around and using my axe. And that's pretty much the whole game. And especially, it's not a very difficult game, especially when you learn that. When you learn that you can get, like when you have two big enemies, and you make separation and get in between them. You just do your charge attack back and forth, and then you just do that like 50 times. They never hit you, and then they die. So I kind of think it's a bit of a flaw with the gameplay. Again, I don't want to call it cheating, but you almost kind of have to find that, what's the term, like breaking the game kind of thing, or spamming, whatever they call it.
It's cheesing. You have to cheese the battle system, because you just sit there and you're like, all right, I know how to, like you said, you just charge back and forth. And
I mean, is that really what you're supposed to do, or what they intended you to do? But that's what probably everybody does, because it's very easy to discover that. And you rarely are just beating like a traditional beat 'em up. You're not doing a lot of cool moves and throwing people around a lot, because you really can't, because as soon as you start doing it, you're going to get attacked. So you got to stop and then jump into your axe or whatever character you're using, but use your jump attack and your ramming or your charge attack, and then from time to time your magic, and that's the whole game.
Bill, are you going to take this?
Well, it's up to the player to mix it up as much as they want. There's the high jump and stab downwards maneuver. There's your special attack, like you say. Sure, you can use the ram, but if you're axe battler, there's a good chance your ram attack's not going to work. They're going to stop it because he's so slow. But if you're the dwarf, you can pretty much nail that 99% of the time. And then there's times where you're trying to double tap over and it doesn't go, and that just leaves you wide open. I'd say the strategy, the fail-safe strategy in Golden Axe is definitely keep in motion, because they can't hit you. You can like do-si-do with all the enemies all around them and literally go up and down through them, and they can't hit you until they kind of get you within a sword's length, and then they'll have their business with you. But the challenge ramps up as the game goes along. The enemies get tougher and certainly faster. So
they do.
Yeah.
But you still end up doing the same technique. At least I did, because that's the most effective. So yes, you can mix it up some for fun, but if you're trying to beat the game, then jumping and charging is the most effective way. And then again, you just end up doing that the whole time. At least that's what I did.
At the end of the game, when you die, when the game is over and you're dead, or you beat the game, there's a grading or rating system from F to A plus or S or something, and you kind of get a score for how strong you were. My impression is that using the charge attack or some of the techniques that maybe you're talking about, Duke, would lead to a lower score. But I seem to recall from your postings, you got a pretty good score at the end of this. So did you guys figure out that grading system? How does that ranking work?
I don't have a clue. Yeah, I don't know.
I thought it was always, like hit to damage ratio of some sort.
I was wondering. I've never quite figured it out, and I was wondering if it had to do with, I'll mention this tactic. There's a couple of areas in the games where there are edges to the screen or cliffs. One of the tactics I use, because I'm not good enough to just beat these guys to death, is to knock them off. Did you guys use, and I found in one case where I was particularly successful at that, my grading went up, meaning I was able to kill the enemies or dispatch them very quickly by simply knocking them off a cliff, and that helped.
You can even
did you guys employ that? Huh?
You can even lead them off the cliff, where you can trick them into just walking off.
That's one of the best part of the game for me. I love throwing them off and making them fall off, because it's like, boom, I got to keep going. Let's go.
How about the magic? I know, Melissa, you tried out all the characters, right, Melissa? So
yeah.
How about the magic? What did you think about that system? Is it important to the game, or?
Well, the way I used magic was mostly to save it up until you got to the boss. And then, used it like on the boss level of each level, so to speak, right? So with Tyrus, she had the flames, and it seemed really strong. I mean, you had to the only problem was that you had to fill it up. So you had to get 8 or 9 magic bottles, which was kind of annoying, because sometimes it was those little, I don't know what they are, nymphs or whatever. They would run around with their little sacks of magic, and sometimes trying to hit them was pretty annoying. But usually I got it. And so her magic was pretty awesome, especially when you were leveled up on the magic, because the dragon came and annihilated everybody. So I really liked using that.
How about everyone else? Did you guys use the magic a lot, or was it just a waste of time?
Bosses, save it for the bosses.
Bosses,
make it a little bit quicker. But I was looking at the Master System manual, and for the game over screen, it says after game over is displayed on the screen, your game results will be displayed. At this time, a value indicating your strength in the game will be displayed. Calculation of that value is based on the number of enemies you defeated, the number of lives you used, and a coefficient for your level.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
So it has nothing to do with how fast you defeat them, just your number defeated. I wonder if knocking them off a cliff counts then. Does that count as a defeat, or does that count as nothing?
I think it counted as a defeat because they despawn, so they're dead.
Duke, tell me about the magic.
I, much like everybody else said, mainly used it when I got to a boss where there were also other enemies on the screen. But I did find, I don't know if different strengths of magic, I guess it is, but it never seemed to do too much. I never killed anybody with my magic. I would hit it and they would just fall over, and it still seemed like I had to hit them many, many more times to kill them. So I don't think it did too much except just give me maybe a one hit or so. But I could be wrong on that.
Did you save up your magic? I don't know if it's apparent or not, but each character has 3 or 4 different levels of magic, and you have to get so many bottles to work it up to that. Did you guys try to max out your magic before using it, or was it?
Yeah, I always did. Gilius, you only have 4, right? So it doesn't take long to fill it up. So it's pretty quick.
It's like when you got a hot date on the weekend, so you're saving it up the whole week.
Yes, that's what we were all thinking, Bill. Thank you for.
But also the magic it gets you out of a tough position, right? When they're all around you and the skeletons are just getting out of control, you can just hit that magic and it kind of gets you out of trouble. I'm not sure if it's just the arcade or if the Genesis did it too, but even if they're in the middle of swiping you out, you can hit the magic and it just takes over, kind of saves you.
Yeah, it's the same on the Genesis. It'll knock them back and give you half a second of breathing room.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the magic and the strength for the characters is kind of, Gilius is weak in magic, he's strong. Axe Battler's medium, and then Tyrus is weak physically, but she has strong magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you save up Tyrus's magic, she can do some damage with the dragon breath.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How we
Yeah.
played in the arcade, if 2 or 3 of us were playing, like definitely someone's going to be the girl and someone's going to be the dwarf, and we would just yell at whoever's playing the dwarf to use magic whenever we got into trouble, and we'd save up her magic for the big
Mhm.
boss fight.
Mm-hmm.
I
Good,
tell you, more
yeah.
than anything, it's just great to see the great 16-bit sprites and all the cool graphics with those magic spells. So that's to me the best part of the magic is, checking all the different levels of it, and the different characters have their different like the dragon, like you said, with the girl looks awesome when it comes across the screen. Yeah, so it's just
Absolutely.
great kind of example of the Genesis graphics and everything.
Good.
Superior Genesis graphics.
Okay.
Can
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
also say I just have to say those skeletons, I hated the skeletons the most, and then the enemies that were gray, it was the same enemies, but they were gray, almost like statue-like color,
Yeah.
I felt like
Yeah.
those were the hardest ones,
Yeah,
and they
they were tough.
made me
There-
angry every time, and I would probably use magic sometimes with them because I was like, I can't with you anymore.
In the again with the arcade, sorry to keep going back to it, but talking about the skeletons, if you're in a screen position where it's telling you to go, and you just wait, because it's an arcade, they have to move the player along, right? So 2 of those shadow skeletons will come up out of the ground and wipe you out instantly.
Mm.
I thought maybe they do that too on the Genesis. I sat today waiting for some to pop up and
Never happened, huh? Yeah, the skeletons, I'll agree. Yeah, let's talk about the enemies. Any particular enemies that you guys found? I mean, I'll nominate the skeletons. They were incredibly annoying. Any particular enemies that stand out, or bosses that you want to talk about that stand out, or was it all, like Duke said earlier, it's all just more of the same?
Well, I'll say I guess I'm with Melissa. Those charcoal colored grayed out enemies were kind of they were pretty tough, but I guess I had the most difficulty with them, I would say.
I think the best looking are those huge knights. They were so fun to fight and very satisfying when you get some swipes on them and you're not just charging like Duke does. It's excellent. Super satisfying when you can charge them over a cliff too. That's
I noticed that with those, if you're talking about the same enemies that I'm thinking of, you really couldn't do your jump attack with them because they would swipe you in the air.
Yeah.
You had to do the charge attack,
Yeah.
or get in a good position and use your regular attack. But as with all the other big enemies, there's always other enemies around as well that you have to deal with too. So
yeah.
they were pretty challenging.
With the knight, if you're the dwarf, his special attack will get them too without.
Dang
If you
it.
can
I
get
gotta learn that special attack.
Yeah.
We're
I'm
all
definitely
gonna be
going to
going and playing it and trying out the special attack.
I know. I'm gonna do that too because I had trouble enough just doing the charge attack, with the double.
Doing it consistently.
Doing it consistently.
I'm an electrician. I'm going to try to splice in my Super Nintendo controller into the Genesis and see if I can get that extra button to work.
Let's talk about. I want to talk about the control because Duke, I know you are an excellent game player and you keep saying how the game is easy and you beat it. I will admit, I do not find this game easy. I have not beaten it without a save state. I find the controls to be very difficult. They are. If you're in the middle of an animation, your controls do nothing. If you're getting swiped at by an enemy, you can't get out of it. You just have to sit there and take it. How did people find the controls? Because I found the first Golden Axe, the control to be very difficult for me to get through.
I'd say it makes the game more irritating for sure because you're trying to get in position, and it seems like the hitboxes aren't as tight as they should be. Because there's times you're swinging at somebody and you miss, but it goes through them, and then they swing and hit you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had that happen several times. Okay, it just went straight through that guy. You're on the same plane. He hits me. I get up. I walk back over to him, and then I can actually hit him. I don't know if they had the iframes or what, but there's a lot of cheap hits.
I found that true, especially trying to get those magic potions from those little imps.
Oof.
I'm constantly swinging at them, and it's like I just keep missing them, and they're dancing around.
Yeah, you're a pixel off the right plane or whatever it is. Or
Bill, I mean, are we nuts? Did you have this experience? I found the control to be very challenging.
Yeah, I don't know, the controls, they feel great, like very responsive, and I like the feel of it. Now, again, you go for the special attack and it doesn't happen and you jump. That is super frustrating. And I think on the Genesis, it is like millisecond between those button pushes. Like they have to be pushed together like so close. I like to think on the arcade, or maybe I was that much better in high school, like it was really easy to make that special attack happen. But on the Genesis, man, it's really tough. I'd be like, double button, nope, double button, nope, double button.
Nope. I'll say that it's interesting because I find the controls, it's fun. It's very satisfying. It's a fun game to play. I wouldn't call it hard. I call it more maybe frustrating or irritating. But the controls are very satisfying in a lot of ways and very fun. But again, it's that weird mix of also being a little frustrating, as you mentioned. Especially now, this is not a Nintendo versus Sega joke. It could be taken that way, but my 3-button controller, the original Sega Genesis controller, is very difficult to push those 2 buttons at the same time, like Bill's mentioning, physically. And unlike a regular NES controller or Super Nintendo controller, the buttons are much more, they're smaller, and you can put your thumb over both of them and hit them at the same time. But the way the Genesis controller is laid out, it's just a little more difficult to do that, and the buttons are bigger. So you're kind of pushing on the edge of 2 of the buttons, and I think that's where the difficulty comes in getting that button push just right for that special control. But aside from that, I found the game, I didn't find it very difficult. Once you found out how to hack it, or whatever you want to say, with all the jumping and the charging, I didn't find it difficult, but it was frustrating and irritating at times. But overall, I think it's a fun game to play. It's really it's really fun.
Okay, well, I guess it's me then. I had nothing but trouble with the control, and I couldn't quite get the timing right all the time. And certainly the planes that Oaz was talking about, I'd be swiping or doing the jump attack and saying, how did I miss this guy? It just didn't line up correctly. Moving on, though.
TV.
Huh?
I blame our TV.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to, I asked Duke about playing on original equipment. We're playing on a high-def TV with God knows how much lag. I'm going to blame that for my problem. I think it's the lag. No, I'm just not that good at these games. I want to go to the, we were talking about some of the enemies. I wanted to talk about the bosses. Duke, I know in particular, I think you had tweeted out that you got to the end boss.
Death Adder.
The boss, the queen or the princess and the king are strung up, and you fight this boss. How did you guys find the Death Adder boss fight?
I mean, I found it very similar to all the other ones. It wasn't particularly difficult. Again, you had the big boss, and you had all the enemies swarming around as well. You took care of them first, and then focused on your charge attack or whatever. And I think he was the one that kind of threw the magic down. You had to jump over it, right?
Yeah.
And then hit him. But if you did your charge attack, as he's charging his magic thing, you could hit him before he got it on the ground. And
that's right.
Threw it towards you, and it was pretty easy for me. And then, as you were talking about, I thought I beat the game, and then it goes on to another enemy. But I think that's extra in this game. That wasn't in the arcade, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, that's an extra level. You actually go inside the castle in the arcade. It stops there. And actually in the Genesis, the first Death Adder you fight is like Death Adder Junior.
Okay.
The end of the next level, it's Death Adder.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's an extra level in the Genesis version, and you go in, and that's the level where there's all kinds of cliffs that you can knock people off. And then you do fight another Death Adder. Now, again, I'm going to reveal sort of my inability to play this game. The final boss, the main Death Adder.
Deathbringer, I think, is what that last guy's called.
Deathbringer. Okay. He had 2 skeletons. Are those skeletons invincible, or are they just really, really strong? Do you guys know? Because I don't think I was ever able to defeat the skeletons, and I finally gave up and just focused on the boss.
I think you're right. I don't think they die.
And if they do die, then others come in.
I think that's the case.
There's a constant You have those two guys; they're always there, and so you try to avoid them the best you can, and then focus on the boss.
So yeah, so the last boss again, Duke, your theme, it's just sort of more of the same. This time his magic would go in 8 directions or something, but there is one thing that was particularly annoying about that last boss. If you got hit, what happened? Maybe you guys never got hit by him.
Was it an insta death?
It was he'd use magic. If he knocked you down or hit you, then he would also use magic.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Or no, he would cycle through the different magic. When he wouldn't just use one.
Random.
So for me, at least, with the skeletons, I'm trying to get those guys out of the way because they're a waste of time to attack. I'm trying to attack this person, this Death Adder, but every time he knocked me down, there was another hit coming with magic. Yep. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I remember it too. It was weird. I kept trying to figure out what was going on. It was almost like it was glitching up or something, but I think that that's how it was supposed to be. Yeah, it was pretty tough.
How about the co-op? This game has co-op, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love co-op games. No, I'm serious. But one thing I liked is that it didn't seem like there were more enemies due to us both playing. You know, a lot of times when you do co-op, then the enemies kind of change. You get more because it's, you know, now there's 2 of you to play. So I liked that. What I didn't like is that we could hurt each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you're trying to get a guy at the same time, or you think, oh, I'll do the little, you know, dash run and then hit him, but your guy's right there, you're gonna hurt each other.
Them first. My brother and I got in more than one fight because of that. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, you walk into a swing, they walk into a charge, something, and then, or if you're in the middle of swinging, you know, doing was it a 3 or 4 hit combo, and then you pick them up and you're like, I can't do anything but throw you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did anybody else have an opportunity to play co-op this time around?
I didn't this month, but definitely have in the past.
It's nice. It's a nice feature of the game. And Melissa's absolutely right. It doesn't add any additional enemies.
That might take away this game-breaking thing of charging your enemies. If you have a friendly in there that's going to get in the way, you might have to come up with a new strategy.
Yeah,
exactly.
My brother and I was usually, you take the top half, I'll do the bottom half, and let's try to communicate, which didn't always happen all that great. But
I mean, like a lot of times, like if there's like one enemy left, like one of us was just like sitting in the corner waiting because we didn't want to accidentally get hurt, you know, while like, you know, if like I took care of one person, Eric would just wait until they were done and then we'd move on together.
It's interesting. I wonder if there were many other games with friendly fire in the co-op mode. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I think early on, especially arcade games, they had that friendly fire in there because it's going to make you put in more quarters if you can't keep out of
That's what it is.
the line of fire. If the first time you figure that out, you're playing, you're like, why am I losing so much health? What's going on? It's like, oh, it's because you keep hitting me. Stop it.
Yeah. But collecting the magic too with 2 players is a lot better. You get that little dwarf in between the 2 of you and just start swiping. It just bounces back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah. Sometimes you can get a boss in a juggle like that because you can sit there and interrupt their animation if you hit them at the right time. But people hitting them from both sides, you don't have to sit there and go through that 4-hit combo that you can't alternate from.
I forgot to mention, I wanted to maybe go back to some of the gameplay elements. There are creatures in the game, and as you go through the different levels have different kinds of creatures. Did you guys ever take advantage of using the animal mount for any reason? Did you? Owaz, you're nodding your head. Which ones did you always try to get an animal or what?
Oh, always try to get them because it'll save you some hit points. The animal will take hits instead of you, and
really,
if you can do it right, because you have, I don't know the actual names of the creatures, but you got the tail swiper.
Yeah.
You got the one that shoots fireballs and the one that just shoots fire on the ground. And if you can time those right, you can sit there and alternate. You basically juggle the guys even when you have them on both sides if you can hit them right. Because you turn around and shoot one, turn around and hit the other one, and by the time the other one is getting back up, you can turn around and hit them again. And even with the bosses, you can sit there and just time it right, and there's nothing they can do.
Duke, did you use the creature mounts at all?
Yeah, always. I'll say my favorite is the fire-breathing dragon. That was
Yeah.
for me the most effective and a great sound effect as well when you breathe that fire. I just love that sound. But I will say the tail swiper was a little wonky with
Yeah.
hit detection, and it was hard to kind of line it up, and you had to kind of turn around and face the right way before
Yes.
you hit your button, and then turn around again if you want to hit it the other way. So it was a little clunky. So I always got on it, but I really enjoyed the fire breathing dragon the most.
With the tail swiper, and like I got used to it towards the end of playing, is you have to hit it and you hit it again so that you swipe one way and you come back the other way so you're facing the right way.
Yeah.
And you just have to get used to doing that, because instead of hitting it and then turning the other way, if you hit it twice, you can turn around a little bit quicker.
You got to be facing the enemy so that when he swings the tail, it'll actually hit him.
I think he was called the chicken leg.
Yeah. I think it is.
Certainly, yeah, that's what it looks like.
And
so, okay.
Overall, the creatures are called Bizarrians.
Bizarrians.
Oh, there's a little tidbit too. The one with the beak, I think it's a tail swiping one, was in Altered Beast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you guys know that?
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Good little Sega
cameo.
fan. Okay.
I think too, back to the arcade, Melissa was saying you don't get extra enemies with 2 or 3 players, but there must have been in the arcade, because I remember when we played co-op, 2 of us could be on dragons at the same time, so there must have been extra enemies.
Well, it's either that or you came across. There's some levels that have more than one Bizarrian show up.
That's true.
In the village there. Yeah, you're right.
So, but I didn't play through the arcade. I played through the first 2 or 3 levels, so I'm not sure. That would be cool though if you get both of them on beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what did you guys think about the overall design of the game? Graphics, sound, control. Duke, I'd like to start with you as a first-time player. We kind of covered this a little bit, but if you were to sum up the game presentation overall, how do you feel about it?
I think it's fantastic. I love the sound design. It fits with the theme very well. The music fits great with the fantasy theme. The graphics are great. I love 16-bit graphics, and this one really knocks it out of the park with the big sprites and the background designs.
Mm-hmm.
I could have done with a little more, like there was no extra flair in the background, like movement or like cool little, like I noticed in the arcade version, like the eagle's eye is blinking, and in this version it's not. So I know it's an earlier title, if I'm not mistaken. But aside from that, because I know they just improved on that kind of stuff in the future. But it's a fantastic looking game. I love the theme, and it's got a great tone, a great feel. Great sound design, as I mentioned. So I really, all that stuff is good.
And that death sound.
Ah!
Oh yeah.
It's funny how the music has to stop for it to play the scream. They toned that down in the second one, which I know we'll talk about soon.
That second one.
I want to talk about the second one too, but we'll get to that. Melissa, how about you? You were a first timer.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think?
I thought it looked great. I liked the music. The music was good too. It's a great beginning, 16-bit game, and it's short and sweet. Yeah, it like they said, it's not hard, but it is a little irritating, but it's definitely something that you can just pick up and play. And if you're, a 1/4 guy, then you can get through it like nobody's business and enjoy it.
Just with the opening splash screen, you got the bassy bongo sounds or something, and the title swirling in. It's just fantastic presentation all around.
Yeah.
The music is so good. Like you said, the voice kills. I think some of them are samples from movies. I think the actual death screams.
Yeah, Rambo. I don't think in the Genesis version. I think the arcade version uses a sound clip of somebody getting hurt in Rambo.
Really?
So I watched a couple of videos in preparation for this, some history of Golden Axe. So that was one of the things I remember.
Wow, Duke doing homework. just the sound they gave to when your sword lands a swipe, that swiping sound through the bodies is just a perfect, satisfying sound.
Mm-hmm.
And you know you've landed it. It's so good.
And the clunk clunk when you hit him over the head with the butt of your sword. All that stuff sounds fantastic. I agree.
Transition between scenes, it would get darker. The music would fade into a new song. It's just well thought out. Thought overall great presentation.
It's
the
true.
music changed when you had the bosses too, like when you knew you were at the final stage of the level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the weird music with the little nymphs running around in between levels is just kind of eerie and weird, and again, just fits so well with the tone of the game.
Yeah.
And I always try to put myself, when I play a game like this, a retro game, I always try to put myself in that time and think about what it was like to see this back then. And I got to imagine, and because I did play it back in the day a little bit. And it was probably just mind blowing how great this game looked and sounded back in 90, help me out here. When did this come out? 89, you said?
I think it was 89.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So seeing a game like this on a home console with this, especially the Genesis sound is fantastic. It's just
Duke is blown away by the Sega experience.
Like I'm a Genesis fan. I'm not. I know I'm a Nintendo guy, but I love the Sega Genesis. It's very unique sound. It's got great character to it. It's back in the day when consoles all had their own kind of character and their own kind of vibe, and the Genesis definitely has an edgy kind of hardcore older kid, as we all know. And this game fits right with that. It's just kind of dark and edgy, and it's got that great bassy sound, like Bill mentioned. So it brings back all those memories when you hear a Sega Genesis game. It's the same for games like Altered Beast and Sonic. All the games for Sega have a very unique sound, and it's a great sound.
It is. It's great. It's iconic, especially if you grew up with it. You turn it on, you're like, oh,
yeah.
All the feels come back, and and like. I don't know why, but that death sound is just great.
I definitely remember the death sounds about, that was one of the things when I first saw it in the arcade. Okay, well then let me ask you, Owaz, we've talked mostly about the Genesis version. We've talked a little bit about the arcade, but some of us also tried out the Master System version. So what's the deal with the Master System version?
Yeah, I think you need to take into account that, okay, this is like a demake that they took something from the arcade and it was on Genesis, and there's like, hey, let's put it on the Master System. So it's not going to look like the Genesis version. But I think they did a great job with it. The same with Altered Beast. They're not like, if you had any other option to play it on anything else, you should probably play it on that. But I think it's great what they were able to do with the Master System. And I think there's somebody hacking the Master System version to add in the other characters.
Really?
So there might be a homebrew or something come out one day, sometime in the future, where you can choose the characters.
Oh,
but
nice.
I mean, I think it looks great. The sound, there's a lot of sound missing. Like there's no death sounds. Like there's nothing. Which when you knock an opponent off screen, that's what you need to hear to know, okay, that guy's dead. I don't have to worry about him anymore.
Right.
We don't have that in the Master System version. But I think, the villages, the eagle, the turtle, they don't look as great as they do on the Genesis and the arcade. But I think it still looks good for what they could do with the Master System. And I think it and Altered Beast, your character is like a background sprite. And that was how they were able to get it to animate and work the way that they did. And so they pretty much that was probably like what kids talk about, taking, making it run at the best that you could get from the system. Just pushing it to its limits, I think is what I was going for. But you obviously got, it's a different style completely because you only have Tariq or Axe Battler, and you can choose any of the magic styles. So if you want to have a bunch of magic, you can pick the fire magic of Tyrus and have fun with that. So it's a neat little difference. But it definitely runs slower. And it's easier to get stuck on like a ledge or an edge of a building or a tree or something. But you can also use that to your advantage because you can make the other guys get stuck on those things. Like you're kind of hiding behind the building, waiting for them to come around, and then you just smack them. And the end is different. Like the Genesis version is different than the arcade version, and the Master System version is even different. They're like the end cutscenes is kind of like the end of Conan, but so it has a static picture, and then it has text that comes by, and then that static picture changes 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times. And that was when I was like, who's Tarek or Tariq, however, you know. And so that's when I learned, oh my gosh, okay, this guy's, it's Axe Battler, but for whatever reason they gave him a different name. And then I had to look in the manual and found out that backstory. But like I said, any other version you'd be better off playing. Just, you know, I love the Master System, but that's just being honest. Any other version is going to be better.
Yeah,
but still fun to look and see what they were able to do with an 8-bit system at that time, which was like the late 80s, early 90s.
Bill, did you say you tried out the Master System version?
Yeah, I tried out the Master System. I have that cartridge. You know, I tweeted it out, try to impress you. Remember that tweet?
I am impressed. But let me ask you honestly, did you play for more than a few minutes, or did you say this is too choppy, it's too sluggish?
Yeah, well, when I put it on, I was shocked at how good it looked for, you know, such a pathetic system to pump out those graphics.
you will get hurt.
You guys are always underestimating the power of the Master System.
The sprite was so huge. It was really shocking how big it was, and everything looked really good. But yeah, once 3 enemies came on, that thing just chop.
Yeah.
It was for me unable to play, so I couldn't get much further than the village.
It's like Owazrim said, they managed those big characters because they were actually drawn as part of the background. And that's also why it was so choppy, because the background tiles can only move 8 pixels at a time. And so the characters are kind of bouncing around. So it makes for good screenshots, but the animation of the game, I think, is lacking. But,
so it wasn't as good as the Double Dragon port on the NES.
But I don't think Double Dragon was as graphically intensive as Golden Axe was.
Sounds like an excuse to me.
Right.
No, it's just saying that Double Dragon is worse.
Oh. All right. Let's see. Before we
I don't
get.
know if I mentioned it. The background music, though, they did a good job with the background music for what the Master System could do.
Oh yeah, the music I thought was pretty.
It was like you could hear, like when I was playing through it, I was like thinking, "Oh yeah, this sounds pretty close to what it was on the Genesis, but you know, not quite there."
Yeah. So let's segue that into some of the other games. We've talked about Golden Axe on a couple of systems. I do want to talk about Golden Axe 2. What do you think of Golden Axe 2?
Right off the bat, I think it had a little smoother controls. I played again with, is it Gilius? Is that his name? The dwarf?
Gilius?
Sure, yeah.
Gilius. Yeah, I played with him pretty much exclusively, and he seemed a little quicker. He jumped around a little better. His swinging his axe was a little quicker. So a little smoother. His special move was much better. I used it often. He kind of spins around his axe. He plants on the ground and spins around it, and you can knock enemies away on both sides. It was very effective. So I enjoyed that very much. I didn't beat it. I got pretty well through it. I think to the castle. So I'm not sure how far I was, but I imagine I was pretty close to beating it. But I do have to give it props for one of the coolest level names I think I've ever heard, and that is that fiery cave they called Dragon's Throat. I was like, that is the coolest name for a level I've ever heard. It's very
that was
metal,
pretty cool.
Very metal, as the kids say. But yeah, but again, great music, great. Not as memorable, probably just because it's not as nostalgic.
Yes,
but I think it's really good. Great graphics, visuals, but again, it's just more of the same. A little smoother controls, but it's all the same stuff. You know, you're just jumping around. You're doing your charge attack. You're not getting any upgrades. There is something different with the magic that I liked, and that's you can hold the button in and pick what level magic you use instead of just relying on how many bottles you collected. So that was a nice little feature I liked as well. But yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was just pretty much more of the same.
The music is really cool. It's very percussive. There's like lots of snare drums now, it seems, in the music. It was pretty good. I've just played through today as the girl, and her special attack is much like Gileas's from the first game, where she does this somersault backwards, but she adds an attack. When you hit it, she attacks forward and then somersaults backwards and attacks the guy behind her at the same time. So it's really effective and wide ranging. So I thought that was really good. The magic I don't like. I don't like having to hold down a button. It's like that part in the first game. That's what I liked, was it was like a get out of jail card. You hit the magic and everything clears. You know, now you're holding it down to get where you wanted. You know, I don't like it. I don't like it.
No. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was pretty good, because then you could like say, oh, I just want a little bit of magic for these enemies, and then you'd still have magic later for the boss. Plus, you could still move around while you were holding it down. So it's like you could maneuver yourself away from the enemies while gearing your magic up.
Melissa, some of us dudes just like to shoot it all in one shot. So
Well, that's a shame.
That's the third.
That's right, Phil.
What am I missing? I can go video games.
Well, that is the question. What are you missing?
All right. So we have 2 votes for the changed, I'll say, magic system. Owaz, how do you feel about Golden Axe 2?
I think it's a good improvement over the first.
Yeah.
Like Streets of Rage 2, I think it's the best out of the trilogies that they each have. Golden Axe 2 was just more, like Duke said, it's more of the same from the first one, but it's more refined and better.
Yeah.
And the magic system, it's hit and miss sometimes, because it stinks when you're holding it, you're doing whatever, and you're like, I let it go too soon, and I did level 5, especially with Tiris. I did level 5 instead of level 6 or whatever her max is, and you're like, oh, dang it.
Yeah.
But it is nice because you can be like, oh, okay, I only need to use one. I need to get these guys to back off for half a second. So you hit it, let it go, and do that. So
did you notice in 2 they did improve, like the enemies smartened up about the charge?
Oh
attack?
yeah. I meant to mention that too.
Yeah.
I did notice that. So when you charge attacks, when you charge, sometimes they would, instead of just being able to go back and forth, they would move out of the way, and you couldn't just charge attack the same way. Yeah, I noticed that too.
You needed to be closer before you started the actual attack.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a gameplay improvement.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought Golden Axe 2 played or controlled for me a lot more. It was more my style. I was able to get used to the controls a lot easier than I was able to with Golden Axe, and I felt it to be generally a much smoother and improved experience. But like Duke said, I've been nostalgic for the first game. That's the game that I really liked. But in many ways, Golden Axe 2 is superior. It just doesn't have that nostalgia factor.
I think its presentation seemed duller to me. Like the backgrounds, the way the scenes moved, the characters, and the audio. When they died, the blah blah. Why would they take away those death sounds?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to come back to.
They toned it down. Yeah.
I don't like the death sound in Golden Axe 2 at all.
I don't either.
I think it is so dumb because they go bleh. It's like it's a terrible.
You want that death scream that you got from the first one. That's so iconic. And when I first heard it playing it, the Golden Axe 2, I was like, oh, I was disappointed.
Yes.
I thought maybe they'd mix it in, but no, you just get that one little wimpy sound,
Yeah. That is true. That is the one thing I didn't two things. The nostalgia and the death sound are not there. Owaz, you mentioned there was a trilogy. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, only Golden Axe 1 and 2 came out in the U.S. for the Genesis. But there is a Golden Axe 3.
I think it showed up on the Sega channel.
Oh, did it? Was it Sega channel? Okay. So did anybody play Golden Axe? Bill, you said you found it. Did anybody play Golden Axe 3?
I have played it, but I haven't played it recently.
Okay. Bill, did you try it out for this month?
Yeah, it's on that Sonic Sega All-Stars compilation disc or something.
That's right.
I had that for PlayStation 3, so I did that. Yeah, it's more of the same, more progression of what you know. Gilius is not a usable character. He's there, but he's not a usable character. Other than that, I can't remember much more about it, to be honest with you.
In place of Gilius, you have like a panther and just like a huge barbarian.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a little guy too. There's a kid or something. He's super fast, and his magic, he's the only time in the franchise that his magic is not offensive. His magic is it grows an apple tree and drops apples. And if you grab the apples, it'll restore your health. So if you're playing cooperatively, you need that guy.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Well, Melissa, you and I may have to check that one out.
Maybe, yeah.
I only played it briefly.
And the arcade had a sequel as well. I don't know if it was called Golden Axe. I think it might have been called Revenge of Death Adder.
Yeah, Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the same as Golden Axe 2, or is it different?
It's different again. Characters are different. Gilius is riding on top of a big dude. He's one of the characters. There's a lot more enemies. They kind of, I don't know, Streets of Rage did a bit where there's just tons and tons of enemies on screen at the same time. You can choose different paths.
And you can choose different paths in 3. That's also one difference.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
From some of the videos that I watched, that is what a lot of people say is the best Golden Axe game, is that arcade exclusive one, Return of Death Adder, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them were saying that was like so good, like the cream of the crop when it comes to Golden Axe games. I don't know personally, but that's what some of the people were saying.
It would definitely be a quarter muncher compared to the first one. It's definitely more challenging.
So, Melissa, there's an arcade one-up of Golden Axe and Golden Axe Revenge of the Death Adder. And it also has Shinobi and Altered Beast. And, if that's the best game and that's the only way to play it, I mean...
You got to get it.
That's a no-brainer.
We should think about maybe it'd be wrong not to get it. Anyway, okay.
You have at the QDawgs house, tons of space.
We'll talk afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Okay. No, I want it on camera so that you can, be held accountable. Okay, so we've talked about I think we've talked about all of the main line games. There is one more, which I have never played. It's removed in time from the others by about 2 decades, I think. And it is Golden Axe Beast Rider, which was an Xbox 360 and PS3 game, if I'm not mistaken. Owaz is pulling out his copy. Has anybody played this game? Anybody want to comment about Beast Rider?
I played through it and I beat it. And it needed more time in the oven. The controls are kind of rough. And like getting on the beasts is the worst part because of how they turn and control. It makes it really rough to play. I went back and repurchased it because I think I sold my copy to a buddy for $5 after I played through it. I unlocked the Golden Axe, and so you can actually run through the game and play with the Golden Axe, but everything kills you in one hit. But you kill everything in one hit as well. So, it's that trade-off.
Yeah.
The problem is when you're on a beast and you're trying to maneuver someplace and you've got spikes coming up or something, there's traps, and the beast doesn't handle quite right, and you're dead. You're dead. It's like, I'm just not even going to get on the beast. I'm just going to walk up the path and leave it behind. But
interesting.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough to pick it up again, and I started playing through it again. And I was actually doing better than I was when I actually beat it. Because on the normal mode, there you have the ability to dodge and parry attacks. And the game will let you know by orange or blue glows on the enemy's weapons, I think is what it is. And so you can counter those, and you can kill them a lot quicker. But it definitely needed more time in the oven. It's not what it should have been. Hopefully what Sega's coming up with this year, next year, is going to be a lot better.
Oh, they're coming up with something new, huh? Is that part of that Sega announcement from earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I do also want to mention, for anybody who's interested in even more Golden Axe, there are a couple of spin-off games. There is one of my personal favorites, Golden Axe Warrior, which is a no-shame, straight-up clone of The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
But I think it has 9 dungeons as opposed to the inferior and smaller 8 dungeons in The Legend of Zelda. Duke, that's for you. I'm teasing, of course. Golden Axe Warrior it's a Zelda clone, and it's quite good.
We touched on the Genesis collection for the PS3 and the 360, but Golden Axe Warrior is unlockable on this. It's the cheapest way that you're going to be able to play it off of an official item.
There's also a game called Axe Battler, which is the name of the barbarian character in the first game, and that's a Game Gear game. I think that's another similar. That might be an RPG.
That one's it's an RPG.
It is. Okay, and then there's a game for the Sega Saturn, I think, called Golden Axe The Duel, which is a fighting game.
Yep.
Does anybody have any experience with any of these? I know, Owaz, do you have any experience with any of these outside of Golden Axe Warrior?
I beat Axe Battler. That was a game I had from when I was a kid, and then 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, I'm going to get around and I'm going to beat this, and I did. It's interesting because you go into like dungeons and you have to find the item, and then you have to go to town, and the towns, every time you go to, you can learn a new move, but you learn it by defeating an enemy, and if you get hit once, it kicks you out of the battle, and you have to start all over. So that's one of the downsides of it, is like any fight you get into, if you get touched, you're out.
Okay.
So, and the random battles. So if you can't get to town quick enough from failing too many fights, you're gonna die and get taken back to town and have to redo a bunch of. But it was a fun playthrough. I enjoyed it. There was a couple of frustrating parts, but Axe Battler overall was a good fun. If you got a Game Gear or a way to play Game Gear games, it's worth picking up if you can find it for a good price.
Cool, but very, very different than the arcade beat 'em up that spawned the series.
Yes.
So with that, I'm going to pull a surprise maneuver, and let's go back to the original first Golden Axe game, and I'm going to ask you all to rate it using the Curtis Friesel 5-star method. No half stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. How would you rate the original Golden Axe that you played on Genesis or arcade, and would you recommend it for people to play today in 2024? Duke, what's your star rating?
And put me on the spot.
Yes. No half stars. I'm doing Curtis's thing.
What about 3/4 stars?
Integers. Whole numbers. Whole numbers.
I give it a 4.
Yeah.
4 out of 5. I teetered on 3, between 3 and 4, but I'm going to go with a 4. It definitely has some flaws, as I mentioned, but has such a great presentation and such great music and such just wonderful 16-bit graphics and sprites that I just got to give it a 4 for that. So I really enjoyed it. It's a fun game despite its flaws, and I absolutely recommend it.
Okay, and Melissa, who probably thought she was going to be last. What is your star rating?
My star rating, I think I am going to say 4 as well. It's a pretty good, fun little beat 'em up. It doesn't take long, you know.
That's true. It's short, isn't it?
Yeah, it's short. And it's a fun little beat 'em up. And when you just want to put something in and take out some aggression. And I think people, should play it. I think people should play it. Yes.
Everyone listening should probably play it.
Yes.
Okay. Owaz, where do you stand on Golden Axe?
So for the Genesis version, I think I'd do a 4. The Master System version, I'd do a 3.
Uh-huh.
But like I said before, play the Genesis version. I think it's well worth it. It's a fun game. There are some issues with it, but I think it's worth playing it and checking it out because I think the history part of it is interesting. It's also good to see how far they've come. If you play the second one, you get a better idea of the iteration of progress. But it's a fun game. It has iconic music and it has iconic sounds for for all of us that grew up with it. It's a solid game with some issues. So I'd give it a 4.
4. Bill?
That's 5. Easy.
Yay!
Come on. Arcade version here we're talking.
Okay, the arcade's 5.
Like that whole game is like everything is satisfying about it. Everything. It's just pleasing to play, and like I said, it seems like the developers didn't want to beat up the player. They wanted the player to have fun and enjoy this thing. Like Melissa said, time is nice and short. It's a perfect amount of time, but just everything is satisfying, especially like the final kill in the arcade game where you take out Death Adder. I don't know if you've seen it. The golden axe flies in the air and then comes back down into his chest.
Mm-hmm.
A definitive kill.
Satisfying. So yeah, definitely. It's a fun.
Also in the arcade, it's cool because like his remains are like in the background. You see all these little things squirming, and then it reforms him.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I watched the YouTube video. That was a pretty cool effect.
Yeah,
Bunch of
Master
worms
System
gathered
version.
together.
He just pops up on the screen. It's like, oh,
Oh, 8 bits.
yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what about you?
Yeah,
Oh, I have to.
Yes.
of course. Yeah.
I'm gonna say a 4 also, because I found the controls to be a little frustrating, getting stuck in an animation sequence that I couldn't break out of. But I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. Like I said, I remember coveting it from the magazine ads I was seeing in 1989 and thinking the graphics were beautiful. And I'll take this opportunity to mention, I forgot to mention, there is a 32X upgrade. And if you have the means to patch a Genesis ROM and play a patched ROM on a 32X, I would recommend it because it improves the Genesis version to be much closer to the arcade. The enemies still disappear, but the graphics are quite a bit better. Has that eagle eye animation that Duke was talking about, and the backgrounds look a lot more realistic, and even the weather changes as you go through the levels. But even as it is, the Genesis version is very good, and I'll give it a 4 only because of the controls that I struggled with. And of course, I recommend playing it, especially if you have the means. The co-op. The co-op is quite fun. It's not the best co-op on the Sega Genesis. That probably goes to Streets of Rage, but it certainly has its moments. So I think everybody's pretty generally positive. We got 4 4s and a 5, so we're looking at I'll say a B+ average. So give Golden Axe a try.
I do want to bring up one thing. We didn't really talk about the ending too much. I know the arcade has like one of the coolest endings, and I did see a video on it, and it was really cool, where all the characters jump out of the arcade. You see like an image of somebody playing the arcade. They all come bursting out of the arcade, and then they see them walking out of the arcade. That's a really cool ending. But I don't think it happened on the Genesis, right? I don't remember seeing that. So, but it was cool, the effect of the words in a ball, and they were using a baseball bat, and then the words would open up and have the title, the credits. That was really clever and really cool. I really enjoyed watching that. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. That was a neat effect.
That's right. Thank you.
The Genesis version shows like all the enemies, and it breaks down their height, weight, attack, move ratings. So you have a little bit more information on that one.
Bill, it sounds like you've beaten the arcade version multiple times. What are your thoughts on that ending?
I loved it. Imagine being in the arcade, seeing that for the first time.
I know.
Yeah.
It was
cool.
wild.
Yeah,
that was great.
That's pretty cool. Like a little fourth wall break, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, Sega's always been pretty cool with stuff, you know?
Had a good, celebratory music, too. Like a new song came out.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Cartridge Club Game of the Month podcast. I'd like to quickly mention some of the upcoming games that we have so people can start looking forward to those. February is FPS February, and the Cartridge Club Patreons have chosen GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64. So
Ooh.
get yourselves ready for, very classic classic shooter on the Nintendo. For March, we are going mad for the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection. This was a collection that came out a couple years ago. Our co-host Curtis Friesel will be hosting his, I think, normal March Madness and discussing all of the great games from Atari. And finally, we have the honor of announcing that April, which has historically been our Zelda month, we are back with Zelda, and this time it is The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, which is a Game Boy Advance game. So be sure to join us for that. This is one I know I've been wanting to play for quite a long time, so looking forward to playing that one. And again, if you'd like to get involved with the club, I'd encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Cartridge Club NA. You can also visit our Discord for all kinds of discussion about past, present, and future games of the month. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge. And with that, I would like to thank all of our guests and have them tell us a little bit about where we can find them outside of the Cartridge Club. Bill, let's start with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Mighty QDawgs, for having me on the Golden Axe episode. I really appreciate being here. And, of course, thank the QDawgs again for and the rotating group of Cartridge Club hosts that keep this podcast going month after month. So thank you guys for keeping it alive and keeping it going. And, of course, don't forget to check out the QDawgs in the QDawg House. Weekly treasure we have come to love and expect to see every week on YouTube.
Keep those expectations low, Bill.
We expect and we'll see it every week. So thank you, QDawgs, for that. Anyways, yeah. My name is Bill. Start to Continue podcast. You can check me out there with my co-host Joe. And I got a little project, Midnight is Flashing, YouTube, with my good buddy Chris Roberts over there, where we talk about VHS tapes. So look for that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Duke, how about you? Where can we find you?
Well, first I'd like to thank you for inviting me on. When I got the invite, I was very excited because I haven't been on in quite a while, but I've been involved in the Cartridge Club since season 1, and I'm not as involved as I used to be just because of my lifestyle and everything else, but I'm super excited to be on here again and discuss a great game. So thanks for the invite very much. Appreciate it. And you can find me, I do a podcast with my good friend Chris Roberts, the Retro Nonsense Podcast. We do it pretty much once a month. And I had a very active YouTube channel there for a while, but it's become much less active. I just put my first video up last week that I put up in over a year. So, but I really enjoy doing it. I will pop in from time to time and throw some content up there, but it's way less than it used to be because all my focus is on my podcast these days, but that's where you can find me.
Owazrim, how about you?
All right, you can find me on Twitch, YouTube, X, Twitter. I've got my own Discord. I also stream some on Scanline Heroes, which can be found on Twitch, Discord, and YouTube, and the Sega Crew, which does usually monthly events over on Twitch, YouTube, and they have their own Discord.
Yeah, I want to encourage everybody to check out the STC Pod podcast, the Midnight is Flashing, Retro Nonsense podcast, and of course, Owazrim is a huge streamer, so be sure to check out all of their content. And finally, Melissa, I will ask you, where can you find us in the event that you are still interested in?
You can find us on YouTube under the Mighty QDawg channel. That's QDawg. And we are doing a weekly vlog type video, 5 minutes in the QDawg house. You can see what we do in
For
just
free.
5 minutes time.
Or don't do. Yeah.
Or don't do. That's correct. And we do pick up videos from time to time as well. And you can find me on Twitter at Mrs. QDawg. Again, QDawg. And where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter or X at Mighty QDawgs, also DAWG. So, to everyone listening, we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for joining us, and CC Unite.